You know what time it is. It's time for another episode of the 7 and a Hook Podcast, the world's premier sports betting podcast. Your source for the best information and insight when it comes to sports wagering. We cover it all because you bet on it all. So let's head up to the studio and get this show rolling.
Hello, everyone, and good evening. Welcome to tonight's episode of the 7 and a Hook Podcast, the world's premier sports betting podcast. I am Brooksy, the Irish Insider, and I'm flying solo tonight as my co-pilot, who's usually with me, Eric Easy Money LaFleche, is actually on assignment this week. I can promise you this, though. Wherever Easy Money is, I'm sure he's cashing some big tickets. So anyways, hope all's going well, Easy, and we will see you on next week's episode. Speaking of episodes, this is our 7th episode, and we certainly want to thank everyone that's been listening, following, emailing us, direct messaging, giving us some feedback. Very, very much appreciated. We don't take that stuff for granted. So for those that need to find us on our socials, it's the number 7 and a Hook. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and head over to YouTube and search 7 and a Hook Podcast. Give us a subscribe. We really appreciate it. And before I get rolling, I got to point out, we have one of our followers this week on Facebook send me a quick message today. And basically, he was watching one of our recent episodes, and he said, hey, I couldn't see the hat you were wearing. What's on your hat, whether it's the angle of the camera or a cell phone, whatever it was. So believe me, I'm not against self-promotion. So here's a good shot of it. PatrickJBrooks.com. Along with hosting and producing this podcast, I also have a website in which I do some audiobook narration and some voiceover work. So if you happen to be an author or an audiobook publisher or maybe a magazine that looking for a narrator, PatrickJBrooks.com. Or maybe you're a company looking for some voiceover work to help promote your product or services, head on over to PatrickJBrooks.com. All my contact information is there. I'd certainly like to hear from you. And my mantra is it's your story with my auditory. So let's see if we can work together. So anyways, thanks for asking me that earlier. There was a listener out in actually Minnesota. So anyways, let's get to tonight's show. And the agenda for tonight is I'm going to start with some college football, a little NCAA. And I got I think about 4 or 5 spotlight games I want to go over with you folks. And then I'm going to touch upon the Heisman Trophy race. Who do I like? Who do I not like? Who's hot? Who's not? Got a few players you're going to say, okay, yeah, and there's a couple maybe, okay, I didn't consider them. Then going to move on to the NFL. Got, again, 5 or 6 spotlight games I want to go over, including tonight's Thursday night game. I call it Thursday Night Thunder. I'm going to end with a little boxing. Yep, there's a big match this week, big card, and obviously it's, Fury versus Wilder 3. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that fight, but there's another fight on that card, an earlier fight that, is getting overlooked, and we're going to talk about that because I think it's a fight you should look at, and I really think it's a fight you're going to be able to make a little bit of money on. So anyways, let's head right to college football and get tonight's picks rolling. So Arkansas, ranked 13th in the country. They travel to take on Ole Miss and the Rebels. Ole Miss is ranked 17th. Ole Miss is favored by 6 at home. Arkansas comes into the game 4-1. Ole Miss 3-1. Now, Arkansas got embarrassed last week against Georgia, 37-0. They put up the big goose egg. That's hard to do in any type of sport. I don't care what level, pee-wee, high school, or college, but a goose egg, that's pretty embarrassing. Ole Miss, they also got embarrassed against Alabama, 42-21. Now, yeah, they put up some points, but the game really wasn't that close. I mean, Lane Kiffin, needless to say, he got schooled by Nick Saban. That was kind of embarrassing. But whatever. So both teams get embarrassed. What happens the following week? Who bounces back? Who falls back, right? Well, I look at it this way. I'm looking at Ole Miss, okay? I don't think they're going to have a hard time moving the ball against Arkansas. Last week, Arkansas led up 273 yards on the ground. Again, that's hard to do, but they did. Their front seven, not that strong. Matt Corral, quarterback from Ole Miss. I think he gets back in the Heisman race this week. He wasn't terrible last week, but he wasn't good enough to become the Heisman favorite. Matter of fact, we're going to talk about him a little later. So I expect a big performance out of Matt Corral and his offense. I like Ole Miss at home this week. I'm going to lay the 6 points. Go Rebs. All right, let's move to Michigan, favored on the road by 2 and a hook as they travel to Nebraska. Okay, Nebraska 5-0 on the season. Nebraska 3-3. All right, so I'm going to look at Michigan first. They had a great road win last week as they traveled to Wisconsin to take on the Badgers, and they came home with a 38-17 win. Very solid win. I really think Harbaugh has the team playing really well this year, really cohesive group, and you know what? Pretty much mistake-free, okay? And that's been a big reason why they're 5-0 this year. Nebraska also had a big win last week. It was actually homecoming. Northwestern traveled in, and Nebraska throttled them. 56-7. What? Yes, 56-7. And before I kind of continue on, breaking down this game, I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back because Nebraska was one of my stronger plays last week. They were giving up 10.5. The total on the game was 52. I had Nebraska and the over, so good job, Brooksy. Anyways, so back to this game. Scott Frost, I talked about him last week. The team is believing in him, okay, and they're coming, okay. That's the reason why they're 3-3. I was wrong about them at the beginning of the season. I didn't think they were going to be this good 6 games into the season, okay? So I'm going to give them credit. Now, they're better than they were last year, but they're still not better than Michigan, okay? Michigan is just a much more talented team. I think finally Harbaugh has that engine really purring. So as much as I want to give Scott Frost some credit for getting the Nebraska team to believe in the corn again, I just don't think they have enough this year to compete with Michigan. So I'm going to lay the 2 and a hook with Michigan this week. So I think the Wolverines are going to cover that game, and they're going to cover it pretty easily. All right, I'm going to move to Maryland Terrapins. They travel to Ohio State. Ohio State is -20. Yeah, they're laying 20 points at home. Maryland's 4-1. Ohio State's also 4-1. Now, I think Ohio State is finally getting a groove since that loss at home not too long ago against Oregon. Okay, their last 3 games, the Buckeyes have scored 41, 59, and 52. That's putting up some points. Okay, now Maryland last week, they got absolutely annihilated at home against Iowa. Okay. 51-14. The Hawkeyes just literally annihilated them. Ran the ball, threw the ball. 51-14. It could have been 70-14. Okay, so I think it's a big ask for this Maryland team, which is relatively young, to now pack their suitcases and travel to Ohio State and try to bounce back after getting smacked by the Hawkeyes. I don't see this happening. The last 6 times these teams met, Ohio State has won all 6. Okay, last 2 times they played at Ohio State, it was 73-14, 62-14 with Ohio State coming home with big victories. I see this again. Ohio State rolls. I'm laying the 20 with the Buckeyes at home. Okay, Michigan State favored on the road by 6 and a hook, travel to Rutgers. Okay, Michigan State's ranked 11th in the country. They come into the game 5-0. Rutgers 3-2. Okay. Michigan State, they've got wins against Northwestern, Youngstown State, at Miami, the U. Okay, give them credit going down there. That's not an easy place to play, not just play but win. But they came home with the win. Nebraska and Western Kentucky. Rutgers got 3 wins, 2 losses. Their 2 losses this season were against ranked opponents. Ranked opponents. Ohio State and Michigan. Okay, I think they're going to lose to another ranked team this week, Michigan State. So last 7 games, Michigan State has won 6 out of the 7. And last year, the one loss was last season, and that was at Michigan State. Rutgers beat them 38-27. Michigan State had a ton of turnovers, and that really changed the complexion of the game. I think the Michigan State has this game kind of penciled in as a little payback. So I'm going to lay the 6 and a hook, and I think Michigan State is going to cover this game against Rutgers. All right, next game I have spotlighted is the New Mexico Lobos at the San Diego State Aztecs. Now, before I kind of break down the game, Lobos, I think it is absolutely one of the coolest names in all of sports. Every time I hear it, well, of course, I think of Los Lobos, the band, and their song from, I think it was 1987. It was the movie La Bamba, right? It was the movie about Richie Valens. It was Lou Diamond Phillips, right? He played Richie Valens, and every time I hear Los Lobos or I hear that name, that's what I think of. So how did it go? It went, Yo soy marinero, soy capitán, soy capitán, soy capitán. Bamba, 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 bamba. Yeah. Okay, we'll just move on from that. We'll let the folks at Los Lobos sing. I just had a moment there. Anyways, went back to 1987. Wow. Okay, let's get back on track. Anyways, so the game. New Mexico, they're 2-3. They travel to San Diego State, who's ranked 25th in the country, by the way, and they're 4-0. Okay, Aztecs are a 19 and a hook, 19.5 point favorite at home. The schedule makers, in my opinion, have been super friendly to San Diego State. Their first 5 games, 4 of them have been at home. This is the 3rd one they've had at home. So they've had the benefit of kind of sleeping in their own bed and haven't had to, pack a suitcase to go anywhere. So I definitely think that plays a role in this game. Last 7 games they played, San Diego State has won all 7. Okay? Look for San Diego State's running back, Greg Bell, to have a monster day. Okay? You can call it kind of home cooking. New Mexico's front 7 can't stop the run. Greg Bell loves to run, and he's going to run all over the Lobos. Even though I love their name, and I even like singing La Bamba when I hear it, I just don't see how New Mexico keeps this game close. So look for a big win by San Diego State. Okay, so those are my spotlight college football games this week. So as I mentioned, now I want to talk a little bit about the Heisman Trophy race, okay? And there's 4 players I'm going to look at this week. The first one is Bryce Young. Okay, he's a plus 120 favorite. He's kind of been the favorite all year. Alabama quarterback. Alabama's 5-0. So, and they had a big, we can call it a decisive win this past week, against Ole Miss. 42-21. He showed up when the lights were on, and he led his team to a victory. Now, it was a workmanlike performance. He was 20-26, 241 yards, and 2 touchdowns with 1 interception. He kind of put a little distance between himself and Matt Corral, the Ole Miss quarterback, who we're going to get to. When you got 2 favorites for the Heisman coming in, the team that wins, that guy's going to move up in the rankings for the Heisman. So, and that's kind of what happened. Now, for the season, right now, Bryce is 108 completions out of 149 attempts. He's got a little over 1,300 yards, 17 interceptions, 17 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. So again, right now, it's kind of his Heisman to lose. But if Alabama doesn't run the table, and I don't know if they're going to, because they got a couple tough games to end the year. They got LSU, and they end the regular season with Auburn. So I'm not giving the Heisman to Mr. Young as of yet. All right, Matt Corral. He's plus 200 right now, quarterback from Ole Miss. Again, his stock dropped a little bit last week because, again, he lost to the other Heisman favorite in Alabama. Now, and this is going to sound like a silly pun, but he can truly turn the tide, okay, if he has some really, really big games to finish the season. But they have to be really big, okay? And what does hurt him is that his decisive game was last week, and he didn't put up enough to help not only put him over the hump, but have his team win. So, anyways, for the season, right now, he's completed 87 out of 125 passes, a little over 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, 0 goose egg interception. So that's a stat to keep watching. So, again, I still think he's got a shot at it, but he's got to put up some really, really big numbers to get back to being the favorite. And actually, as I mentioned earlier, I think it starts this week against Arkansas. So, again, look for Matt Corral to have a big week. All right, Cincinnati quarterback, Desmond Ridder, okay, plus 1,200. For the season, 73 for 115, little over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions. He's also rushed for 3 touchdowns. Cincinnati's 4-0, okay? I mentioned a decisive game. You know, usually to win a Heisman, you know, if there's no prohibitive favorite, it's who had that one memorable decisive game, right? Well, and think back for Doug Flutie. The Hail Mary pass against Miami, that kind of sealed his Heisman Trophy, right? None of us forget that game. And believe me, that was a big, big reason, maybe the reason why Doug Flutie won the Heisman that year. But as far as signature wins or signature games, Desmond had his last week. Cincinnati on the road beat Notre Dame. Again, Notre Dame may not be the juggernaut they were a couple years ago, and they might not be as talented as they were a few years ago, but they're still a good team. And it's Notre Dame at home. So, and he put up almost 300 yards passing. So he really caught the attention of a lot of people, because Cincinnati's not on TV every week, right? Maybe if you're watching the ESPN highlights, occasionally you see something with Cincinnati, but that was, you know, that was prime time, and he showed up. So I got to give him credit. You know, and the Bearcats, like I said, they're 4-0. They're quietly ranked 5th in the country. Okay. Now, what may hinder Desmond to really running away or being a true contender for the Heisman is their strength of schedule. They do not play another ranked team all year until I think it's the end of November when they play SMU. And right now SMU is ranked 24th. So again, Desmond's really going to have to do some magical stuff to get noticed because, again, not playing any ranked teams, so you're not going to have a lot of nationally televised games. But he's still a player to watch. And the last player I want to look at is C.J. Stroud. Yep, Ohio State quarterback. He's plus 2,000 right now. For the season, 80 for 124. He's got a little under 1,300 yards passing, 13 touchdowns, and 3 picks. Now, the Buckeyes still have some, which I call marquee games, ahead of them. They've got Penn State still. They've got Michigan State, and we all know they play Michigan. So those are 3 big games, more than likely going to be on national TV. So he's going to get exposure. Okay, so now, if they're in the running for the Big Ten title game, if they make it there, let's say that, there's a good chance that CJ is going to have had to put up some big numbers against some really good teams. If that happens, he will be a contender for the Heisman at the end of this season. So those are the four players I'm still watching. Other than that, I think everyone else is kind of, they're not in the running, in my opinion. I think it's down to these four players right now. So, all right, so that covers the college football. I want to move now to the NFL, okay? And I'm going to start with tonight's game, Thursday Night Football, Thursday Night Thunder, I like to call it, and it's the LA Rams favored on the road by 2.5, and they travel to take on Seattle, the Seahawks. The Rams come into this game 3-1, the Seahawks 2-2, okay? Total on the game is 54.5. All right, the Rams, well, they got their first loss of the season last week against the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals are the real deal, Holyfield, I think. I don't know. I mean, jury's still out, but man, they look good. Arizona. Whew. Anyways, we may talk about them later. Seahawks, they actually picked up a big win on the road last week against the 49ers. So, last time these two teams played was the NFC wildcard game last season. Rams, and that was at Seattle. Rams won that game 30-20. I promise you, Seattle has not forgotten that, okay? Lines, Seattle's getting 2.5 here, okay? I actually like Seattle, okay? And why do I like Seattle? I still think the Rams are a really, really good football team. The reason I like Seattle tonight is last week, okay, the Rams defense could not contain, could not control Kyler Murray, okay? And what is Kyler Murray? Well, he's a mobile quarterback. He can run, and he's accurate. Okay. Russell Wilson, think about it. Mobile quarterback, he can run, and he's accurate. Now, is he as fast as Kyler Murray? No. But guess what? He can move out of the pocket. And his legs are going to cause some issues for the Rams defense. I like Seattle getting the 2.5 tonight. So play the Seahawks. All right, next game I'm going to look at as one of my spotlight games is the New York Jets against the Atlanta Falcons. And why I'm saying against is, yes, the Atlanta Falcons are considered the home team, but this game is actually taking place in London. This is one of two games where it's the international football where we send a couple teams over to London to play. The line is set at 3.5. Falcons are favored by 3.5, and points total is set at 47. Jets are 1-3. Falcons are 1-3. I think it's safe to say we didn't actually send two of our best teams this week across the pond to put on a show for the Londoners. But, hey, it is what it is. The Jets got in the win column this past week, picked up their first win. They upset the Tennessee Titans. Very impressed with the Jets this past week. And Zach Wilson. Okay, Zach Wilson did not look like a rookie quarterback this week. He looked like an NFL quarterback. Okay, he was 21 of 34, 297 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns. He did have 1 pick. The Jets defense, it bent, but it didn't break. Okay, so that kept them in the game, and the Jets offense did enough to pick up their first victory. And I tell you what, the Tennessee Titans, I'm not sure what to make of them, but anyways, the Jets looked good last week. Good enough to win. How about that? Falcons, okay? They played the Washington No-Names. The Falcons had 2, 3, 4 chances to win last week, but decided they didn't want to. Okay, they changed the lead 2 or 3 times. I thought the Falcons were going to come home with a victory, but again, I was wrong, and the Washington No-Names ended up winning 34-30. Matt Ryan had a good game, relatively good game. He was 25 of 42, threw for 283 yards, 4 touchdowns. Okay, that's pretty good stats for a quarterback. Their defense just couldn't stop anything. It was pretty pathetic. Okay, so how do we break down this game? This is how I look at it. If the game was truly at home, and it was, the Jets at Atlanta, this line to me would be closer to 6.5 than 3.5. Because even though both teams are 1-3, to me, Atlanta is a better team, more veteran team. on top of that. And because of that, I'm going to actually take Atlanta, lay in the 3.5 here in London. And I talk about a young team, veteran team. Well, the Jets are the youngest, or among the youngest average age team in the NFL, right around 25 years old, average player on the roster. The Falcons, this is their second time traveling to London, doing one of these international games, and it was 2014. Well, they have 4 or 5 players that were on that roster that have already done this trip, including Matt Ryan. So I think that veteran presence of, well, this is a strange trip. Well, you got 4 or 5 guys that have already done it, having that experience, saying, hey, this is what it's like, this is what we're going to do, this is how it's going to seem. I think having that veteran presence is going to make a difference this week. So I'm going to lay the 3.5 with the Falcons in London. I think it's 9 a.m. or 9:30 a.m. on Sunday. Next game up on my spotlight list, the Green Bay Packers, favored on the road by 3, travel to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Green Bay is 3-1. The Bengals are 3-1. Total on this game is set at 50 and a hook. The Bengals actually have had a couple extra days off because they played the prior week's Thursday night game. So they had a couple extra days rest. The last game was against the Jaguars, and they won that game 24-21. Joe Mixon, who is their running back, and kind of, I don't want to say heart and soul, but he's a big part of their offense. He's banged up. He's got a sprained ankle. Doesn't look like he's going to play. And if he does, he's certainly not going to be 100%. I don't think you can understate his value to the team, or at least to the offensive side of the ball. Currently, he's 3rd in the NFL in rushing, and he's got 2 touchdowns. So believe me, his impact or lack of impact certainly is going to have an effect on the team. So without him in the game, Joe Burrow, he's going to have to step it up a little bit, and he may be asked to do a little bit more than he's used to. But when Mixon's in the game, man, he keeps those defenses, they can't focus just on the run or focus just on the pass. So he keeps the defense, honest. So him being out, I think, is a big loss. Let's look at Green Bay. Okay? Now, we all know how they started the season. Terrible, right? Easy money, and I joke about it, and we say that first game where they traveled to play the New Orleans Saints, and it was actually in Jacksonville because of, they couldn't play in New Orleans because of the hurricane. To me, it was kind of their 4th preseason game. They got smoked, 38-3, okay? Aaron Rodgers didn't look like he wanted to be there, right? Interceptions, very few yards passing. Well, guess what happened? The Green Bay locomotive, choo-choo, well, guess what? It's chugging along now. They've banged off 3 wins in a row, okay? Last week, another big win. Beat Pittsburgh at home. They just beat them. They beat them up, okay? 27-17. Big Ben and the big Pittsburgh Steelers, they got manhandled, okay? Rodgers, again, another solid performance. 26-36, 248 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns. 0, put up a goose egg, no interceptions. He even rushed for a touchdown, okay? As much as we railed on him for kind of not showing up in that first game against New Orleans, he has been the MVP-like candidate he was last year. So I'm going to lay the 3 points with the Packers, with the Cheesies this week as they travel to Cincinnati. So take Green Bay. All right, next game up on my spotlight list this week is the New Orleans Saints, favored by 1.5 on the road, travel to the Washington No-Names. I don't want to get too deep into this no-name thing, but what are they doing? Okay, it's been over a year. Name your team. Okay, name your team. If you don't name your team, fire everyone in your marketing department because you don't need them. Okay, free tip from Patrick J. Brooks about marketing. Name your team. Get a logo. You'll probably sell a few more shirts. Anyways, I'm sure Daniel Snyder likes when he gets advice from me. So, anyways, the Saints, as I said, favored by 1.5, traveling to Washington, no names. Total set at 44.5. The Saints come into the game 2-2. Washington also 2-2. The Saints, to me, are kind of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde right now, or call him Mr. Inconsistency, right? They beat Green Bay, they beat New England. They lose to the Panthers, and they lose to the Giants. Now, the Giants game, that one was tough to swallow if you are a Saints fan. They were up 11 points last week against the G-Men with 7 minutes to go. Couldn't hold on, ended up losing in overtime. Jameis Winston, I'm not going to blame him for last week's loss because he actually played fairly decent. He was 17 of 23 for 226 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions. Usually when Winston doesn't throw an interception, you got a good chance at winning. Well, unfortunately, their defense wasn't good enough to close out the game. So I don't really hang this on Winston. Now, we also got to say he was a quarterback. He didn't do enough to put more points on the board. Backup quarterback, Taysom Hill, came in a couple times and he does some wildcat stuff. Well, he rushed for 2 touchdowns. Okay? And I know one thing. Their head coach, Sean Payton, really, really loves this Hill character. Now, is it enough for him to make a change to make Hill the starter? I don't think so. Not yet. A couple more games, a couple more losses. I think the Jameis Winston era may come to an end before they get too deep into the season. And I think you may see Hill given the keys to run that team. Now, let's look at Washington. Picked up a really, really solid win last week, 34-30. They traveled to Atlanta. As I mentioned, there was a back-and-forth game. Neither team seemed to want to win, but Washington did enough to come home with the W. Taylor Heineken, as everyone knows I like to call him, had a really good game. 23 of 33, 290 yards, 3 touchdowns, and again, 0 goose egg, no interceptions. All right? Got to give the kid credit. All right? Again, this guy's a forever backup, and he's kind of held his own as a starter. Now, of course, he's not the answer. They're still waiting for Ryan Fitzpatrick to come back from his hip injury. But listen, you go 2-2 as a backup. Maybe you go 500 and you keep Washington relevant until Ryan comes back. Got to give that kid credit for doing his job. All right, so the Saints. 3 out of their last 4 games have been on the road. That's a lot of windshield time or a lot of sitting in an airplane time. I think the travel is going to catch up with them this week. Again, they're on the road, and the following week is their bye week. Okay, so this is what I can see. Washington gets up early, maybe by 7, maybe by 14. I think you're going to see some of the Saints kind of thinking about that little mini vacation they have with the bye week. So I like Washington here, getting 1.5 points at home. The no names are the team. The no names are the play here. Okay. Next game I want to look at: the Eagles, Philadelphia Eagles, travel to take on the Carolina Panthers. All right. Panthers are favored by 3 and a hook. All right. Eagles come into the game at 1-3. Carolina comes into the game 3-1. Okay. Eagles, they've lost 3 in a row. Those birds haven't been flying very high. Let's put it that way. They lost last week to the Chiefs, 42-30. But if you look at the box score, Jalen Hurts, right? 32 of 48, 387 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He also had 8 rushes for 47 yards. Rookie receiver out of Alabama, becoming Jalen's kind of go-to guy, 7 receptions for 122 yards. If you just saw that stat, you would say, boy, there's a good chance the Eagles won that game. Against most teams. Unfortunately, they were playing the Chiefs. The Chiefs are like a video game. They get the ball, they score. They get the ball, they score. They hard to stop, sometimes impossible to stop. Mahomes had 5 touchdowns. Okay, he's like a fantasy football machine, right? He just touches the ball, they score. Whether he runs it or throws it, he's a magician. Their backfield also had a very, very good game. They rushed for over 200 yards last week, okay? And it was Edwards-Hill that kind of led the parade with over 100 yards rushing. So, listen, Mahomes throws for 5, and your running backs get over 200 yards rushing. That's usually a recipe for a win. Now, the Panthers, they played the Dallas Cowboys, and they picked up their first loss, 36-28. Game based on the score is probably a little closer than you thought. There was 14, I don't know, garbage time points, because points are points, but Panthers scored 14 points in the fourth quarter to make this game look a little closer than it was. Dallas really was in control of that game. So it was really probably a 38-14 type of game, and that's how it seemed as if you watched it. Sam Darnold, 26-39, 301 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions, okay? That's his downfall. If he throws picks, the teams usually lose, okay? So let's look at this game, all right? The Panthers are 3-1 at home, okay? The Eagles are 1-3 going on the road, and they've lost their last 3. The line's only 3 and a hook. Something stinks here, okay? Home teams usually get that, proverbial 3 points just for being at home. Well, you're telling me that they're getting that proverbial 3, but they're only a half a point better than the Eagles? Yeah, something stinks here. I think the odds makers are selling us something that I'm not buying. They want me to put my money down on the Panthers. I'm not, okay? The Eagles are going to cover this game. I'm going to take the 3 and a hook with the Eagles. Call me crazy. It's going to happen. All right, so those are my NFL spotlight games of the week. All right, I'm going to move now. I'm going to totally change gears. And where are we going? We're going boxing. Now, I wish my co-pilot, Easy Money Eric LaFleche, was here, because he's kind of the boxing guru. And, him and I think we may differ on the big fight. I'm going to get to that, because he kind of gave his play last week on what he thought was going to happen. So if you want his pick, go back and watch last week's episode of the 7 and a Hood podcast. But this week, I'm going to give you mine. So, again, we talked about Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder 3. It's their the trilogy, as we like to say. I'm going to get to that fight, but I'm going to talk about one of the early fights on the card that, again, doesn't get talked about a lot, but there's definitely some value here that, listen, if you're going to get the pay-per-view and you're going to have a little skin in the game, why not make a little money? So we're going to look at the bout between Adam Kownacki, who's minus 270. He takes on Robert Helenius, who's plus 220. Okay. These two cats last fought back in March of 2020. Okay. Kownacki came into the fight as a huge favorite. Now, I have to stop there, because when I say huge, I don't pronounce my H's, okay? And I know my sister's at home watching, and she's a teacher, and she has always given me a nudge saying, what's wrong with you? There's an H in the word. And I don't know why I don't pronounce my H, so I'm going to try, okay? Huge favorite. No, can't do it. It almost hurts for me to say that. Sis, Kelly, I'm sorry. I tried, but it's a huge. Too much work. Huge. H is silent. Anyways, so he came into this fight a huge favorite. He was 20-0. He was currently at that time the IBF Intercontinental Champ. Okay, and he was looking to fill the vacant WB Gold Heavyweight belt by beating Helenius. Now, Helenius came in 36 years old with a record of 29-3. Certainly, I wouldn't say he was. He's not a good fighter, because he is a good fighter. He just doesn't have the resume that Kownacki has, right? Kownacki came into the fight, and he really felt that he was going to dominate, all right? And he did for the first 3 rounds. The fight was going exactly as most people predicted, but the 4th round came, and guess what? Everything changed. Helenius landed some vicious punches, and guess what? It was good night Irene for Kownacki. So, kind of shocked the world type of deal. Now, we jump ahead to October 2021. Kownacki gets his rematch. All right. So, now, in a number of interviews, Kownacki has admitted that he was reckless in the fight. Okay, that's code word for I took him lightly. Because that's what he did. Okay, he wasn't expecting Helenius to drill him the way he did. Well, guess what? He's had all this time to refocus, rededicate, whatever. Kownacki is going to avenge that loss. Okay? This is going to be his night. What he was supposed to do in March of 2020, he's going to do this weekend. So lay the 270. Adam Kownacki wins the fight. And you know what? Good for Helenius, because my guess is he's got a clause for a rematch. So there could be a trilogy here. And guess what? Money, money, money. Hey, good for him. Good for him. Anyways, all right. So let's get to the fight. Okay? Tyson Fury, the Gypsy King, takes on the bronze bomber, Deontay Wilder. Okay? This is their 3rd fight, the trilogy, as they like to say. Okay, Fury, 33 years old. He's 31-0 with 1 draw, 21 knockouts. Okay, Deontay Wilder, 35 years old, 42 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw. He's got 41 knockouts of his 42 wins. This guy can throw haymakers. His 1 loss obviously came at the hands of Fury. Last time they met, February of 2020. Okay, it's been about literally 18 months since they last fought. Tyson stopped him in the 7th round. Neither fighter has had fought anyone in between. So this is literally a rematch, and it's their first fight back since that 2020 bout. Okay, so, and that first fight was in 2018. It was a draw. Controversial draw. You tell me who you like. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It was a draw. So this is literally okay. Let's see who wins this. So let me break it down for you. The first fight, Fury weighed in at 256. Wilder weighed in at 212. Second fight, Fury weighed in at 273. 273. Okay, and Wilder weighed in at 231. This weekend, Fury is going to weigh in close to 300 pounds. Okay? 300. 6'9", 300 pounds. Yes, you heard me right. Wilder, 6'7". He's put on about 10 pounds himself of muscle. He's going to weigh in a little over 240. Okay? Now, my moles, and yes, I do have some moles, Wilder is in the best shape he's ever been in. Best shape in his life. He's going to look like literally a statue. You know, and I don't mean he's not going to be moving, but a bronze statue. He is that jacked. He is that cut. Okay? So he is in the best shape of his life. My moles tell me that Tyson Fury has had the best time of his life over the last 18 months. Okay? So, one of these two cats has been a gym rat. The other hasn't. Okay? And I think that's part of the reason Fury is going to weigh in close to 300 pounds. Now, he's saying it's a strategy thing. I don't buy it. Okay? So, what's my play? I like Wilder at plus 220 to avenge his loss. That's right. Deontay Wilder plus 220 to win the bout. Should be exciting either way. Deontay Wilder comes home with the win. Anyways, all right, so that covers tonight's show. We had a little college football, little Heisman talk, some NFL spotlight games, and then we did a little bit of boxing. So hopefully shared a little insight, gave you some information, and it'll help you cash a few tickets. So on behalf of the entire staff here for the 7 and a Hook podcast, I'd like to thank everybody for watching. And as we always say, may your bad beats be small and your big wins be monster.
Thanks again for tuning in to the 7 and a Hook podcast. Until next time, may your bad beats be small and your big wins be monster.